Our AV team has to let me know if we're good to go. Okay, let us begin this exciting series. I am so thrilled about what we're going to do over the next 10 weeks. I've been looking forward to this and counting it down for months. The title is we're looking at how to become emotionally healthy, spiritual Christians. All of that packed together. We're looking at how to take our emotions and get a handle on them so that we can become a better Christian and follow Christ closer. The premise behind this is that if we are emotional wrecks, it is going to affect our spiritual life. There is no way around it. And so when we have emotional upsets, it's a little setback for us spiritually. So we're going to spend this next 10 weeks looking at how to get a hold of that so that we can grow closer. So this is all going to be about adjusting our mindsets. I'll be talking about mindsets. It's going to look at how to have a breakthrough emotionally. We're all doing this so that we can get closer to Christ in a more consistent way. I've found over many years of teaching and doing life coaching that people get stumped with their emotional setbacks and fall into a pattern, a habit that they have a hard time breaking through. And what it boils down to is that these are choices about how we're thinking and how we're behaving in the culture and in our world. And so we're going to spend these next 10 weeks looking at how to switch those. And so what we know through brain science, that it takes 21 days to change a habit. But that's just the beginning. It takes 63 days to make that habit a part of your lifestyle. So we're going to have just about that amount of time to make some real changes. And so I encourage you, if you can't be here each of those weeks, to please take a look at our videos. Each lesson is recorded. I put it out on my YouTube channel, which you'll find at Dr. Kathy Robbs Baker on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe to that. And when you do, you will get notified every time I put the lesson up. Also, I put it on our Facebook page, and I also put it on our public Facebook page, which you can also find. And if you take the QR code on that card and take a picture of that, and when the box comes up on your phone, click on the box, and it will take you right to that page. And you can like the page, and then you'll be able to follow and share the video. We're working very hard in WOW to spread the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And one way to do that is through social media. And so you can find these videos on our public page and you can share them. You can also find it on my personal page and share from there so that we can share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It also goes out each week in our emails. So you have lots of ways to keep up with what we're doing. I encourage you to do that. Well, becoming an emotionally healthy Christian is the theme. We're going to look at how to go from shallow to deep in our personal relationship with Christ. So I have some questions for you to consider. Have you ever slipped into a spiritual coma? Are you changing only superficially? Are you recycling the same problems? Even though you read your Bible every day, you go to church, you participate in small groups, but the same issues keep coming up. Do you continue in any pattern of a weakness, such as anger, or upset, or a critical spirit, or a defensive nature? And have you ever been told you're difficult to be around? Anybody? We get told those things, and sometimes we don't want to listen, but there's usually truth that follows. Well, if any of these answers are yes, you might be both emotionally and spiritually immature. Now, that's a big ouch. Just go ahead and say it with me. Ouch, because that's who we are if we continue in the same patterns of misbehavior and poor judgment and emotional upsets. Well, I've given you two statements that are kind of the key and the highlight that I'll be referring to throughout the series. The first one is emotional maturity and spiritual maturity are inseparable. We will not be spiritually mature as long as we are emotionally immature. So we want to go from immature to mature in both our emotional life and our spiritual life. Now, this study is not a quick fix program. It is something that's going to be long and deliberate. It's very intentional. It has lots of steps and stages to it. And each week I'm going to be looking at a different aspect of emotional maturity and spiritual maturity. I'm going to be giving you examples from Scripture of people who have gone from immaturity to maturity. We're certainly not alone. Some of the most well-known figures in Scripture have struggled with the same things that we struggle with. It's a new way of life that we're talking about. It's a new way of life with Jesus, where we are examining ourselves. We're reflecting. We're becoming aware. We're going deep inside ourselves to see where we are immature, both emotionally and spiritually. So here's how it will look. So take that agenda that's on page 2 of your handout so you can follow the pattern that I'll be using. First of all, today we're looking at what is emotional and spiritual maturity. I'm going to be going back to that personality assessment, and we had great classes the last 2 weeks for that. It was so much fun to give the assessment to first-timers and watching with surprise and sometimes some anxiety about finding out who we are, and then looking at what our strengths and weaknesses are. Today, I'm focusing strictly on the emotional aspects of maturity. So we'll be looking at just the emotional part of our maturity and how we can switch those things emotionally. You'll have a take-home assessment, and it's in the back of your handout. I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. And then next week, I'll be talking about the 10 symptoms of emotionally unhealthy spirituality. It's based on that handout that I'll encourage you to take home and fill out and bring back next week. And what that handout is going to do, it's going to give you your own results about whether you are emotionally and spiritually an infant, a child, an adolescent, or an adult. Whoa, talk about a wake-up call. This assessment has been widely used, and I am so thankful to have come across it and have found it very, very helpful and interesting. We'll look at Saul as an example. Then we're looking at dealing with our emotions and how to deal with them effectively. I am so excited that we have a panel of therapists. You see them on the screen. They will be here that week, and we're going to dig into some of our emotional problems, and you'll come away with some strategies on how to improve in those areas. So that's another can't miss day. Next, we're going to look at how to know ourselves, who we really are in Christ, and what to do about that, and what to do when we have emotional issues, and how to get back on track. Then this one is something I have never taught before on looking back to move forward. We're going to look back at your family of origin. You'll be looking at a family tree, and you'll be identifying issues that may have caused you to have some of the emotional issues that you present today. And you'll be looking at how to overcome that. The example I find most helpful is Joseph in the Scripture. Breakthroughs in faith journey. This is, I'll be talking about the stages of faith development. I did my doctoral dissertation on this topic, so I'm really excited to dig back into that and show you the different stages of faith, and you'll identify where you are in your faith journey and what you might want to do to have a breakthrough to move forward to the next level in your faith. Abraham is our example. And then we're going to look at how to grow through grief and loss. I find that people who have a loss of any kind, and there are many ways to feel loss and grief, that often get stuck. And when they're stuck emotionally in grief, they're stuck spiritually. So we'll look at how to overcome that by looking at Job. And then slowing and stopping to take stock is about how we need to give real dedicated time to Christ every day, throughout the day, every week, periodically. And we'll look at how important that is for our emotional life. And then on session 9, we'll talk about what is emotional adulthood in Christ. What are our markers, our indicators? We'll look at an interesting take on the Good Samaritan. And finally, the trellis of life. You know, Jesus taught his disciples and those early Christians to begin to sprout and to grow, much like a trellis grows up, a vine grows up. And we're going to be talking about how we can grow from wherever we are. So that is the overview, the highlights of what we're going to be doing each week. I hope that you will find each of those as a can't miss class. And I hope to see you here or online. So that's the overview. The idea here is very simple, but it's really far-reaching. Let's look at what emotional health is. It's defined as our ability to be self-aware and then to love well. It's sort of an interesting way to look at emotional health because what it does, it puts the responsibility within ourselves to be emotionally healthy. First of all, we have to have awareness, full self-awareness, self-reflection. And then to really love others, we have to take action of that awareness. So when we have this awareness, we know ourselves, we become students of ourselves. We begin to pay attention to ourselves. We think about our thoughts. That's called metacognition. We think about our thinking. We think about our emotions as they are happening in real time. I'll give you some strategies on how to control those. We think about the words that we use. We think about the actions we take. And so we begin to learn our identity and our personality and our purpose. All that is a part of this awareness. And then we begin to act. We speak and think and act in relationship to others with one goal, and that is representing Christ. And that's how we grow closer to him. Acting with self-awareness now helps us to love well. It helps us to use the GSO, is what I'm calling it, to love God, to love self, and to love others. It's a God love. It's a self-love, and it's an other love. That's what our ultimate goal is, to do those three things well. Well, the problem we have, though, is that most Christians live on the surface. I might add, most people live on the surface. We know some things about ourselves, and we show some things to the world. But there are many layers beneath the surface that we either don't know about ourselves, or get this, we know but don't do anything about. We're much like an iceberg. Icebergs are made up of many deep layers, and that's who we are as well. We are made of deep layers that exist well beneath our day-to-day awareness. In reality, as you see in the image on your page and on this screen, only 10% of an iceberg is visible. Now, this 10% represents how we conduct ourselves and the changes we make that others can see. We're nice people. We are respectful of others. We go to church. We use clean language. We show the world our niceties. That's the 10%. This is the best behavior for the world to see. But the roots of who we are often go unchanged. So on this image, you'll also see there's a light shading that's another, maybe 30%, maybe 40%. And that reflects our effort to be spiritual. So underneath the surface, we're trying to do some things. We realize as Christians, we need to be in Bible study. So we will do our devotions. We will do some Bible study. We will have a prayer time. We will read Christian books. We will fellowship with other Christians, for example. See, that's the next layer of who we are. And based on those things, we make some changes. But until we get down to the roots of who we are and what we're really doing and what we're not showing to the world, but that is actively a part of us, there is a large portion of that iceberg that stays untouched. The untouched places are our emotionally unhealthy places. Now, these are the patterns and habits that we have just not changed. These are the places that we haven't completely given to Christ. We haven't completely said, I'm not going to be that person anymore. And we're going to do the hard work to make the changes. This is why it's so important for us to know who we are. It's so important to take that personality assessment and dig into those areas of weakness that we really want to ignore on the page, but we realize that is who I am. And we realize that that is what needs to change. But I haven't changed it consistently or permanently. We haven't let go of the roots that go deep. These are the places, once again, that either we have not acknowledged, or we've not known about, or we have known about and continue to let them be. So God made us as whole people, not this iceberg that's chunked up into different levels. He knows all of us. He knows what we show to the world. He knows what we work on at the surface level. He knows how we have wonderful intentions and how we really do want to change who we are and how we react to people and how we often have short tempers and how we often flail about and how we often don't give attention and time to the things we need to and how we can go very deep in our life without taking notice. He knows the whole of us, and He created us in His image to be whole. Look at Genesis 1, verse 27. So God created human beings in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. See, His image is our image. We reflect Him in whole and not in part. So that image of the iceberg is a distorted image of God because He wants us to go deep beneath the surface and acknowledge who we are beneath what we show to the world. See, we reflect Him in our physical, spiritual, emotional, and intellectual dimensions. We're reflecting Him. And ignoring any aspect of that is going to spell disaster for us in each of those areas, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually. Here's what I find interesting. We get taught things, like we get taught skills and strategies for our social life. We get taught early on to ask, please pass the butter. And we are taught to say thank you. We're taught intellectually. We go to school and we learn things. We're taught a little bit spiritually as we grow up for some, and others don't learn the spiritual aspects of life until they're much older. We're taught physical parts. We're taught that we need to move our body and we need to exercise, and these are the things to eat and these are the things not to eat. And those are all part of our being. There are social mores that are accepted in every culture. We go to school and meet the standards, so we're progressing through these areas of our life. There are some guidelines that we have in every aspect. We have physical markers to meet. And so we are never really taught, though, how to be emotionally healthy. Has anybody ever been to emotional school? We don't have those, do we? We have ways for all the other aspects of our lives to learn about and to grow and to move through and have breakthroughs. But the emotional part of our life has been left untouched. We're never really taught how to be emotionally healthy. In fact, many of you may have been taught things like, don't give in to your emotions. You may have been taught to ignore your emotions. So we often stay as emotional infants because we give in to our whims of how we feel. We begin to use our feelings and our emotions to get things the way we want them, to have our way done. We use our emotions to our advantage. But our emotions are indicators of our well-being. Our emotions are indicators of what is going on in our lives. They're like the light that is flashing in our brain to tell us, oh, here's something happening. Let me pay attention. So we often give in to the whims instead of noticing them, becoming aware of them, and taking the next appropriate action. So we want to learn in this series to use those as indicators of how we are to be and how we are to do the next right thing instead of giving in to the whims that come because we feel as if we just need to act into that emotion. Well, emotional underdevelopment is not as obvious to others when we first meet people. So we're in this room with beautiful ladies. We're having wonderful, polite conversations. And there's probably not been an incident that has happened this morning to make any of you think she is an emotional wreck. And then there are some who have been in relationship with each other for a while, and you know the warning signs. And you know when to say yes to lunch and when to say no. You know when to say check, please. You know when to let her drive instead of you drive. You begin to know as we develop in relationship with each other. And so we want to learn to get a handle on our emotions so that when we get triggered by anything emotionally, we know how to handle it well by doing the next right thing. So we're going to spend some time looking at our emotional icebergs. And so over the past 10 years that I've done this personality study, I have found that people begin to have an awareness. And so over the 10 years, it's interesting how some have said, this was life-changing for me. It really helped me to identify who I am and to learn some of the things I need to be aware of. And then others just come back with the same thing over and over. You know, I'm still dealing with the so-and-so. I'm still got the anxiety. I still go into my cave of despair. I still lash out in anger. Can't figure it out. Why is that? What is that about? Here's what it's about. We've decided who we're going to be. And we think that just by saying the words It's an excuse for continuing to live in that emotional upset and weakness. But it's not okay. And as long as we continue to do that, we have a gap in our spiritual relationship with God. So we're going to look today at the emotional needs of the personalities. We all have them. We all have emotional needs. These issues are hardwired in us. We want to learn how to deal with them in a healthy way. And so once we identify who we are in our personality, then we want to change what we have found as weaknesses into the strengths. So we're going to do a quick run through the personalities, focusing strictly on the emotional aspect of the personalities. So sanguines, identify yourselves. Who are you? Sanguines in the room. Okay, it's interesting y'all are in pairs or triples. You gather together, don't you? Now, they're referred to as the talker. Now, here are some emotional aspects. Sanguines are very expressive. They have influence on others because of the way they express themselves. They're enthusiastic. They are very excitable. They love to be the center of attention. They're very impulsive. They often find it very hard to control their cravings. So they, in an emotional area of their life, if they're living in their weaknesses, sanguines are, of the four personalities, the one that may give in to addictions more often than the others. Smoking, alcohol, drugs, gambling, taking risk. Often it's because they want to be around people who will like them, who are doing those things. So that's an emotional area we need to be aware of. These people get bored if they're not absorbed in something that's intriguing, exciting, adventurous. They don't tolerate boredom. They don't like monotony. They'll avoid it at all costs, because you can see if they don't get a handle on that, where that leaves them emotionally, accepting things that perhaps they should not. They don't like routine at all. Now, their basic desire is to have fun. Oh, biblical figures who are sanguines, King David. King David was one. So their needs are in four areas: attention, affection, and approval, and acceptance. So attention. See, they have a fear for being normal, whatever that is, and just blending in. So they have to get attention. Now, this is a weak area emotionally. So everybody likes to be noticed as a sanguine, but to do whatever is necessary to get attention is where it becomes a weakness. So often they will give into it by dressing in inappropriate ways, talking too loudly to get attention. And if they don't get it in healthy ways, if they are living in weaknesses, they're going to get it in unhealthy ways. Imagine teenage girls who are sanguines and don't really understand their personality and the things that they would do to have people like them. Do you see that's an emotional area of their life? Teachers can always see. How many teachers do we have in the room? You could always tell those sanguines, they're the ones that are the class clowns, and if they're in their weaknesses, they have to get attention. They're all constantly talking, they're laughing, they're dressing inappropriately in a weakness. This is an emotional situation. Okay, another area would be affection, and that is the desire to be loved. That's why they're very touchy and feely. They will have a lot of body language that they use to get attention. And so if you don't hug one, she will hug you. That sanguine will sell her soul for a cuddle. They love affection. Now remember, if this goes into a real weakness, what a sanguine might do with her body if she does not learn how to appropriately get affection. And then approval, that's a secondary aspect of affection. They don't want to do anything specific for approval. They just want to get approved, so they'll do lots of things to get you to tell them that you approve of them, because that means they're in the group, they're on the team, they're in the club. So you see that need they have? All these have to be met in an appropriate way, or they will grow up to be the people in the world and in your life that are too loud. They are too in your face to talk to you, and too touchy, and because they're trying to get approval, instead of just having someone say, you know what, I love you for who you are and the way you are, and there's no need to go beyond that. And then acceptance is another emotional need. Most sanguines have people in their lives who are always trying to fix them, trying to shape them up, trying to make them better. And so they're trying to change who they are as this wonderful, fun, bubbly, engaging, entertaining personality. A sanguine in a strength is just the best. We want to be around those sanguines in their strengths who don't feel over-compelled to entertain and to do and to laugh. They're just going to be enjoyable and fun and pleasant, and you gravitate to them. Now, each personality has a method of controlling you, and so the sanguine will control and get her way with you through charming you to do something, through using wit to do, and they'll say things that will entice and snare. Again, look at a weakness emotionally, trying to control someone, what they will promise to do. Are y'all getting the idea here? I'm telling you, I keep going back to teenage girls and what they would do in order to get someone to pay attention. If it's not handled early on, it will. Hi friends, there was a technical glitch in the video that you were watching, and so I am home in the home studio filling in the gap for just a few minutes until we can get back into the live recording that was done earlier today. I was in the middle of sharing a little more about the sanguine and their method of control. They control by using their charm and their wit. Notice how that could be really dangerous for an emotionally unhealthy teenager, for example, who begins to do and say things just to attract others and to perhaps fall into a relationship with somebody who is unhealthy, because this unhealthy sanguine female is making decisions based on her emotions. And then they have fears, and the fear of the sanguine is being unpopular or ignored. And remember, our fears come from something that is underneath us. They show out in acting out on fears. And so there is something underneath that iceberg that comes to the surface through some unhealthy pattern of fear. Another fear that a sanguine has is getting old and unattractive and being left alone. Well, their overview for the sanguine and their emotional needs: they try to get attention from all, affection, including touching, acceptance as is, and approval of every deed. And so that sanguine is the one we're going to see that will reach out and make all efforts to be seen and to be heard. They're the ones blasting on social media. They want people to see them in social activities and engagement, and you get to decide if you're going to take an interest in what all the activities they're doing, or you just scroll through. They're stress relief. All the personalities have a way to relieve their stress. Interestingly enough, those sanguines go shopping to relieve stress because, hey, who doesn't need another pair of shoes? Because there's another party and another engagement, and oh, I need another dress, and how about a little bit more makeup? An interesting side note, that if there's a personality that will have financial problems, it will probably be the sanguine, because they overspend in order to attract and to please others. Their other stress reliefs are partying with friends and eating to cheer up and to reward themselves. Now, on energy level, personalities have an energy level, and the sanguine has a high frenetic pace. They may have sudden exhaustion spells as a result, and they do get their energy from being around people. Well, when sanguines don't have an emotional healthy life that is going in a good direction, and they start living in their emotional strengths, they're spending their time and their energy on unhealthy aspects of living. Remember that Jesus represents all the personalities. He lived in the strengths of all of them. Jesus, the sanguine in Jesus, knew how to work a crowd. He was the center of attention. People gathered to hear him talk. He didn't demand it. They just came because he was so charismatic. He didn't get his feelings hurt, though, when he was not included. He didn't overtalk, and he didn't overshare. He didn't go at a frenetic pace. Jesus took time out. He knew the value of time away. He was comfortable being alone. Well, that takes us to the next personality, and that is the choleric. The choleric is an extrovert, a very strong personality of the temperament. Some call this character a type A person. They're the doer. They are the driver. They are the worker. They're very hard driving. They accomplish goals, so they have a very high level of achievement, high energy level. In fact, that's the highest energy level of all 4 personalities. They have a lot of passion, and they try to instill their passion in other people, for good or bad. Cholerics have the most trouble with anger. That's their outburst area. They have a problem with intolerance and impatience. They want facts instead of emotions. So they're not high on the emotional scale of acting with tears and crying and get their feelings hurt. But they do emotionally have outbursts of anger. And so if you get your feelings hurt and you're expecting a weak choleric to sympathize with you, you're looking at the wrong person. The Bible characters that seem to best have characteristics of the choleric are the Apostle Paul, James, and Martha. Their basic desire in life is to have control. And then their emotional needs are in this category: loyalty. They're hardwired for loyalty from the troops, from their team, from their family. They also want to have a sense of appreciation from their team. They want their team to recognize their achievements. They always have that mental to-do list because they're on that task side. So they get filled up and energized by doing. They are the natural leaders. They are born to lead. There's that whole saying of, are leaders born or made? And the choleric is natural leader. Now, if you have, we'll look at the distinction between mature cholerics and immature cholerics. So depending on their level of maturity and how healthy the choleric is, she may attack or sever relationships or extend grace. So an immature choleric will attack and attempt to destroy, but a mature choleric will act differently. And that's where we return to our previously recorded video. I hope you enjoy. Or extend grace. That's the continuum. And it depends on their maturity level. An immature choleric is going to attack people and try to destroy them. But a healthy one, emotionally healthy, will see the other person's point of view. They're going to offer grace. They're going to help in resolution of problems. So a choleric's focus is external because they're the extrovert. They need to see things that are growing and progressing. We want to give them active support if they're in your life because they are moving at lightning pace. And it is really hard for those who move at a slower pace to keep up with a choleric. And that's a thing a choleric needs to keep in mind, to temper their pace with those that they are around. Well, another emotional need is a sense of control. They need to have control in some area of their life. And if you have a choleric in your life, find something for that person to control. They have this need to be right. And if they're not living in a strength, then they're going to be constantly pushing their point and telling you they're right and you're wrong. The mature ones will now find somebody in their life that they hadn't have wonderful sparring matches with and a back and forth in conversation. They love that. They thrive on that. But now immature ones, weak cholerics, are going to be looking for people who have lesser strength than they do, who are emotionally weak, so they can tower over that person. And so you can see how in family dynamics, how that can really be devastating in relationships. If somebody is a choleric who is weak emotionally, has never really gotten into the underbelly of that iceberg and broken through the surface to deal with those issues, is going to create a havoc of control over the family. Another emotional need is they need to get credit for their good work. They like that praise of the good work and acknowledgement of their achievements. That's very important because a choleric is really goal-oriented. They will tell you, they'll be the first to tell you they work harder and longer and faster than anybody else. And you know, if you have a choleric in your life and you can't come up with another compliment for them because living in weakness, you just say, I don't know how you get it all done. Don't, you see, that's kind of benign. It can go either way. I just don't know how you do it all. There are the worker bees. So they get credit for the good work because they are the worker bees. And achievement. They cannot live without achievement. They're the people in your life that will recount all the things they got done that day. Oh, I woke up at 4 a.m. I took that brisk walk around the neighborhood, and I came back, and I fed the dog. And then, it was time then to take my shower. And then I jumped out, and I started to do the breakfast, and I got all the family fed. And then it was time to take the kids to school. And then after that, I went on to work. I met all these clients, and we had this wonderful business meeting. And then in the afternoon, it was time to go to yoga class so I could calm down just a little bit, only to get all activated again because I needed to go. And you know those people. It is utterly exhausting, isn't it? And who wants to hear it? It does not matter in your world, does it? So just as those sanguines are out being with people and showing you all the people, that choleric is out telling you what all that they've done. We know these people. Their method of control is through a threat of anger. They're going to give you a warning and a threat. You know, if you don't get it done, you know what I'm going to do. You remember the last time this happened. You know what's coming. It's all the threats of an outburst of anger. And their fear now is losing control of a job, or anything, losing control of anything, a job, a family, having a financial disaster, becoming too weak to get things done, becoming incapacitated to do things. So that fear, remember, fears are representatives of underlying emotional issues that have never been dealt with. So when we start living in fears of things, it's because we're not dealing with another issue. That's where we're going with this study, identifying what's causing you to fear, having a fear of losing something. There's something there that needs to come to the surface. Well, so they have all those emotional needs, the loyalty, the sense of control, appreciation for their service, and the credit for all the good work they do. Now, here's how they get their stress relief. Instead of going shopping and going to the party, they're just going to work harder. They're going to exercise more. And they're going to stay away from situations they cannot control. And their energy level is the highest of all of them. They say they need little rest. I kind of argue about that because we all need rest. But they say they can get by. I can do it on 2 hours sleep. Okay, and then by 12 at noon, they are an emotional wreck, spewing their anger and venom on all the people. You know those? Oh, I don't need any rest. And they're energized by doing. Now, the choleric Jesus is the one who had the master plan. He was the one with the vision. He was the one in charge of the people. He was in charge of a ministry, and he knew how to lead well. He gave people tasks, and he sent them out to do the job, but he didn't feel as if he needed to control every word and every move. He had great energy. He needed it for the job he had, didn't he? Because he was trying to change the world. And the only time we saw anger with Jesus was when it was justified anger for people who were not treating the house of the Lord as the house of the Lord. Jesus wasn't demanding. Instead, he created this exciting energy everywhere he went so that people would shout, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." That's our Jesus choleric. Let's look on at our melancholies. They are the thinkers. Their analytical personality is what helps them to take a cautious look at the world and to practice some restraint. They attend to details, often analyzing problems that others find too difficult and tedious to look at. They are the deep thinkers, deep feelers. They will see negative attributes of life. They would focus sometimes more on the negative parts of life than on the positive things. They are very self-reliant. They get wholly involved in things. They're all in. They are extremely loyal in friendships. But most melancholies have a low self-image. They're inclined toward depression. They think self-promotion is tacky. They often live with guilt and are constantly trying to fix themselves. They tend to worry very often. There are some Bible characters that fit this description. Moses was one, and Abraham was one. Now, their basic desire is to have their perfection needs met. And so here's a list of some of their areas of emotional need. Sensitivity. They have this deep need to be understood and supported. They need people to be sensitive to their feelings. And you see how that can swing into a real weakness if they're not careful, that they get their feelings hurt every time somebody says something that could be slightly taken wrong. And so often when you don't know how to respond to a melancholy, it's best to say this: "What do you need from me right now?" And melancholies would need inner strength to say it. Because here's what they often say: "Oh, nothing's wrong." And so that is taking that emotional issue deep into the iceberg, isn't it? Instead of actually saying, when they're asked, "What's wrong?" When you know a melancholy is having a hard time, think about that person's feelings before you respond. See, cholerics would not do that. They just plow ahead. But timing is everything. And so we want to consider the timing with the melancholy, because if they're living in sensitive feelings, then timing is going to be important to get that person to open up. Now, another area is support. Melancholies are like a bridge. A bridge needs support underneath it. And if it doesn't have that support, the bridge will fall down. And so that melancholy needs a support team underneath helping that melancholy. See, that's very different from that choleric. Choleric doesn't need a lot of people. They don't need a support system underneath. They need a support system to help execute the plan. But the melancholy will fall apart if the team does not support. So they have an issue in the family. Then they get emotionally upset. They go into a sadness and even to a depression if there's something that's in the support underneath that is not working out. Now, melancholy needs space. They need a space to recharge their batteries. They need space to go and feel their pain. They use space to help refresh and organize. They find relaxation in their space. Now, the space doesn't necessarily have to be in the house. It can be somewhere else. It would be a place to go, a place to drive to. But they need a space to recharge. They also have an emotional need for silence. Now, I hope that you're tracking here with some opposites. Who is not comfortable with silence of the ones we've shared? The sanguine. So you see the conflicts that can arise in a team, in a home, in a family. One does not need silence and one does. And so we have to have consideration and balance. So they need quiet time. And then their method of control, again, it's a threat. It's a threat of a move. Oh, if they do this and they make that decision, you know what? I'm just going to fall apart. I'll just go into the bedroom and I'll just hide there and I'll just stay there. If this happens, I'll get depressed. Y'all know how I look when I get depressed. You see that? And fears. They have this fear of making a mistake. That tagline goes in front of the melancholy, is a perfect melancholy, because that's what they're striving for. Their idealistic view of life is perfection. So they fear making a mistake and becoming a failure. Now remember, our fears are a representative of an underlying issue that's never been dealt with. They are having to compromise or lower their standards. In their mind, they think I'll be lowering my standards if I do not accept perfection. And no one will ever understand me is a fear. How many times have you heard a melancholy say, nobody knows? Nobody understands this. Nobody, you've never been through it, you do not get it. See, what that does is that leaves out the equation of compassion that other people have. It leaves out the equation of sympathy, because they think if you don't understand it if you've never been through the exact same scenario, A, B, C. And that has to get dealt with. Perfect melancholies have those emotional needs: sensitivity to feelings, space to be alone, support when down, and silence. Now, their stress relief is to get away from people, to withdraw from people, to take to the bed, and to read and study, meditate, and pray. So you see, those are very internal things. Those are introverted things to do. And so their energy level, it's a moderate energy level. They can get drained by people because they're a task-oriented person, and they just need peace and quiet. Now, the melancholy Jesus was sensitive also, but not overly sensitive. He cared deeply for people. He loved deeply. He was a deep thinker. He spent days away from people in order to think and plan and prepare. But Jesus always surfaced better. He used his time away to recharge and get energized and come back and be among the people. And his time in the caves were spent in prayer so that he could surface better, not to dwell on his misery. Our final personality is the phlegmatic. They're referred to as the watcher. They are best in positions of unity and mediation. See, they are the steady people. They are the ones who are calm and cool and collected in their strengths. They're easygoing. They're content in life. They're tolerant of others. They're very well balanced. They're sympathetic. Opposite of choleric, who is the unsympathetic. They're kind and unassuming. And they keep their emotions hidden. So they are often seen as, they can be selfish in their weaknesses. They can be self-righteous. They can judge others easily. They can resist change. Now, who's the change queen in the personalities? Which personality? The choleric is the one who's all about change. And the phlegmatic says, not changing me. We're not changing this furniture. We're not changing houses. Don't change my car. I don't even want to change my clothes. Change resistant. They can stay uninvolved. They can dampen enthusiasm. And they can be the ones that have a blank expression on their face. They can become passive aggressive because they have a hidden will of iron. This is usually a neutral temperament. Of all the 4 temperaments, they're the ones that are neutral. They're not known for other things. Like the melancholy is known as the one, they're going to be the ones to analyze the situation, give us all the details. That choleric is going to lead us out of this crisis, and that sanguine is going to be the life of the party. And that phlegmatic is known as the best all around, even-keeled temperament, so they don't often get credit for being who they are, just in a natural setting and not known for anything specific. Biblical characters who are phlegmatics would be Joseph, Timothy, and Barnabas. Now, their basic desire in life is to have peace. So this is emotional need for them. They need peace and quiet. Quiet surroundings. That's how they feel a sense of their self-worth. Their lifestyle is to have minimum stress and maximum respect. Consider that a laid-back baby. They don't fuss, they don't complain, and then they grow up, and they kind of like the quiet life without a lot of people around, but mama's always pushing that phlegmatic to have friends and arrange the life of the phlegmatic and tell them that they need to get out more. You need to do things, and why do you have to have quiet and sit in your room and read? And they don't understand that is an emotional need that the person has. And then finally, mama will realize that this child enjoys being alone. And if they don't let the child have alone time, the child is going to grow up to be like whatever mama says mama wants. And so that's when people begin to mask. They try to become somebody that they're not really created to be. And that's what happens with all the personalities in growing up homes. If there is one personality opposite yours that is trying to make you like they are, then often you grow up to mask their behavior instead of your own. And people end up with lots of psychological issues and emotional issues that don't get dealt with. And so that happens often with the phlegmatic. And so they have this need for a feeling of self-worth. Now, let me tell you how it looks in school. So you have a sanguine. And here's what the sanguine says. I'm the most popular child at school, and the party won't be fun without me. I wear the party hat. And then that choleric said, the teacher made me the monitor today, and I became the line leader. And the melancholy says, I made my bed before I even went to school, and I came home, and I did all my homework, and I set the dinner table. And then that phlegmatic said, well, I didn't make my bed. I did not clean up my clothes. I did not get anything done. I wanted to come home and relax, and nobody would leave me alone. And that kind of describes the four of them growing up. They have an emotional need not to have stress. They don't want to be involved in the trouble. They don't want to draw attention to this episode. Often they will just stay out of the fray instead of helping to mediate a situation. They run from conflict. They have this deep need for respect. They don't often get that recognition that the others get, and so they need to be noticed for who they are. Now, here's their method of control. It is procrastination. If I wait long enough, somebody else will do it, because it takes way too much energy. And the phlegmatic has the lowest energy level of all four personalities. So the phlegmatics will be the ones who get worn out by all those people up and doing. They get exhausted by that. I forgot to identify the phlegmatics and the melancholies. Who are the phlegmatics in the room? Okay, and who are the melancholies? The biggest group. Y'all look around the room. My word, it is way over half. It may be 2/3 of the room. Melancholies. Oh dear, they're expecting perfection today. How many times have I messed up? Because they have it in the notes. Yeah, I'll hear about it. Okay, fears they have, being pressured to work all the time, being left holding the bag, and facing conflict that appears overwhelming. So their emotional needs now, they like the peace and quiet, a feeling of worth, a lack of stress, and respect. Now, stress relief for them They turn on the TV. They play the video games. They eat and sleep, and they tune out life. You see how very different that is from the others? Each one has a different way to relieve the stress. Their energy level is the lowest of all. They need more rest, which is opposite from the choleric, and they get drained by a lot of people, drained by a lot of them, and too many expectations for task. So let's look at this emotional checklist of the 4 personalities. There are some classic behaviors of each of the 4 that are red flags that indicate there are some emotional needs that go unfulfilled. Those are the things we want to be aware of. So I've shared with you some highlights of the emotional needs. They're also on the personality assessment and the handouts that you've been given. I also have done some videos that are out there on my YouTube channel about the personalities. You can go back and look at those again and see what you can discover so that you can start becoming more aware of the emotional issues. But there are some that are really red flags, that these are the things that if you're not dealing with, they're underneath the iceberg. And we want to bring them to the surface and deal with them once and for all, because they're affecting our spiritual life. So here we go. These are the red flags. A sanguine, excessive, compulsive talking. Sanguines, a red flag is using sex as a replacement for affection. Overextending by doing too many activities. Just too many things, too much socialization. And another is eating. And here's what the research has shown, eating more sweets to medicate. That's a little interesting tidbit there. And then the choleric, red flags, overstepping boundaries. Usurping authority. Oh, translate, I'm the boss of everybody. Arguing every point and never being wrong. Needing credit for everything they do. And then having fits of rage. Red flags. The melancholy. Obsessive worry. Obsessive fear. Overly sensitive. A reclusive behavior. And then for the melancholy, excessive disorders such as anorexia and bulimia. And then the phlegmatic, the red flags are compulsive lying. They do this to get out of doing things, out of doing chores and jobs. This visual of being checked out, like separated from everybody and kind of distant. Becoming passive. Making excessive excuses. So those are red flags for the phlegmatic. If we don't get a handle on those red flags and other flags that may not be red, but they may be yellow, we are hiding those underneath our iceberg. So let's look at what we do now to move forward from what we've been talking about. The first step is recognizing and fulfilling our emotional needs. So first of all, we want to make this list of the emotional needs. We're going to do it in two ways. One, it's often helpful to start by doing it with other people, not in a judgmental way, but people that you know and you kind of identify some of the obvious red flags or obvious weaknesses that they have, because we all do that easier, don't we? We can see it in the spouse or the child or the parent or the neighbor, the best friend. And so kind of identify those so that you can see how it looks and how so-and-so is completely unaware or unwilling to make a change. And so you figure out what those emotional needs are. And then you see how that really looks in the world and how you probably often say, well, if they could just get a handle on that, they'd be just like the perfect friend. They'd be the best spouse ever. Because that's what we all say, isn't it? If only. And so let's identify that. So it kind of starts your brain thinking along those lines. And then the next thing you do is you look at your own emotional needs. You make a list of those emotional needs that you have. The good, and then those that are unmet emotional needs. Because awareness is the first step, and then it must be followed by action. And what I've found over the many years of teaching this and coaching people is many have awareness, but aren't willing to do the work, to do the action, to get rid of the problem. So when we understand our core emotional needs, then we can begin to change that unhealthy, destructive pattern for a healthy one. Because here's what this is all about. 3 words I'm going to tell you. That this is all about these 3 things in our lives. How we think, how we feel, and then how we choose. Every bit of this is about our choices. How we think, and then how we feel, and how we choose. Romans 12:2 tells us, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Just look at those 3 words. Does that describe the personalities or what? They all have this ideal of being good and perfect and pleasing. That Greek word for renewing is anakinosis. It's used very rarely in Scripture. And here's what it means. A renewal, a renovation, a complete change for the better. That's what we're talking about in this series. A renewal, a renovation, and a complete change, rather than submitting to the normal patterns of the world, of the culture. Jesus is asking us to go through a renovation of how we think and feel and choose. He's expecting this. This is not a scripture we can ignore and we can gloss over and we say, I've heard that many times. It's one that is telling us what we are to do with our emotional life. Romans 8:29 says, for God knew his people in advance. Let's just pause on that. He knew us in advance. He knows all about us. He knows what we're showing on the surface, what's on that next level, and what is underneath. He knows us, and he chose them to become like his son. That's what we're doing in this series. It's called the process of sanctification, sanctifying our lives to become like Christ. That's what we're doing, the one who was the perfect personality in all areas. We have been chosen to grow spiritually in order to become more like Christ. And when we let our circumstances dictate our emotions and our behavior, we become stunted in our spiritual growth. I'm going to say that again. When we let our circumstances dictate our emotions and our behavior, we become stunted in our spiritual growth. So this is a journey we're going to be on for the next 10 weeks. We're going to understand our emotional development. I've given you that assessment to take home, so take that home and fill it out and bring it back next week. Here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to say, well, all the spiritual infants in the room, please drive. We have a passy for you. The children will get a tricycle. We'll give the other ones a bike if they're adolescents. And adults, we have a Mercedes-Benz for each of you. We'll not be doing any of that. I will not be asking you. You can share it with me if you choose, but I won't be doing that. And that's just not going to be part of it. It's just an assessment for you to help figure out where you are in your emotional, spiritual life. This is a slow one. It's not a quick fix solution. But our goal is emotional and spiritual health. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your divine wisdom. Thank you so much that you have known us since before we were born, and you have charted a path for us to follow. Help us to be determined now to get on that path and not turn back from you. We're going to give you all the praise and glory for all that we do and accomplish. In Jesus' name, amen.